gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this special symposium, which has been organized as part of the 19th Asia TEFL International Conference. This symposium is our way of honoring late Professor Ganakumaran, who was an Asia TEFL Vice President in 2014, who is early passed away suddenly. Professor Gana, as he was known to many, was a leading figure in English language education in Malaysia and contributed significantly to Asia TEFL. Shortly, I will ask the distinguished members of this panel who knew him well to say a few words about his friendship, about their friendship with Professor Gana. Before that, allow me to introduce the panel members of this symposium. Dr. Joo Kyung Park is Professor of English Language and Literature at Honam University in South Korea. Her teaching and research interests include teacher education, English as a lingua franca, intercultural communication, and interdisciplinary pedagogies and collaborative practices. She has been a university professor, teacher trainer, ELT and international intercultural program developer and host, and English language radio program host, having collaborated with a diverse group of professionals across disciplines inside and outside South Korea. She's also president of Korea TESOL. She was also president of Korea TESOL and the Applied Linguistics Association of Korea. Currently, she serves as Vice President of Finance and Public Relations, Asia TEFL. Dr. Arifah Rahman is a former professor of English language, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh, and is currently research consultant at the BRAC Institute of Educational Development, Dhaka. She has been an English language teacher, teacher educator, curriculum developer, materials writer, language assessor, and researcher through her long years in education. As a consultant, she has worked with international development organizations on projects related to designing language materials, teacher development, mobile-based learning, and gender-related issues. She is deeply involved in developing and empowering English teachers from marginalized communities in Bangladesh, and is an active proponent of South Asia regional networking through cross-border language teachers associations. Next, we have Dr. Willie Renandia, who is a language teacher educator with extensive teaching experience in Asia. Currently teaches applied linguistics courses at the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. He has given more than 100 plenary presentations at international ELT conferences and published extensively in the area of second language. Among his publications is Language Teaching Methodology and an Anthology of Current Practices, Cambridge University Press, Student-Centered Cooperative Learning, Springer International, and he has recently published a book chapter titled Growing Our Research Impact, again in Springer International. He also maintains a large language teacher professional development forum called Teacher Voices. Finally, we have Dr. Masaki Oda, who is Professor of Applied Linguistics and Dean of the College and Graduate School of Humanities at Tamagawa University, Japan, where he's also the founding director of the Center of English as a Lingua Franca, CELF. He has a PhD from Georgetown University, the United States. His primary research interests include socio-political aspects of language teaching, learner beliefs, and language program management. He currently serves as president of the Japan Association of College English Teachers and is vice president for membership of Asia TEFL. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the panel members kindly agreed to be part of this symposium to celebrate their friendship with the late Professor Gana. So I'd like to begin by asking them to speak about the person we're honoring at this symposium. I'd like to begin with Professor Joo Kyung Park.
Okay, well, let me share some slides. So as you can see, the title is Dr. Ganakumaran's Subramaniam, Asia TEFL, and I. And he called me as JK. My name is Ju Kyung Park. And then so to him, I was JK. And this is kind of history that we've gone through in Asia TEFL. In 2003, both of us were founding members of Asia TEFL. And since the foundation of Asia TEFL, Ghana and I were on the council. And particularly in 2007, he was the vice chair of the 2007 Asia TEFL International Conference. And then I was the executive director of the conference. So we started to work very closely, specifically about the conferences. And then he became the regional representative of Malaysia in 2011. And then 2011, I was the conference chair of 2011 Asia TEFL. So when he came to Korea, we had a long discussion about the future of Asia TEFL and all. And then in 2014, he became the vice president of conference and then chair of 2014 Asia TEFL Kuching. So, and at that time, I was also the executive director of conference. So we worked very closely throughout the year for preparing 2014 Asia TEFL International Conference. And then last year, when he took an initiative of creating this webinar series on about professional development, I was very much impressed. So when he sent out this invitation to all the Asia TEFL Executive Council members, I immediately responded to him. And then he thanked me. And then just so shockingly, these emails were just the last exchanges between us. And then this photo turned out to be the very last photo that I took with him. And then just 2 days later, after I got his email, I got this message actually from Willie that Ghana passed away a few hours ago, and that was shocking to everybody. And then another 2 days later, we had the Asia TEFL Council meeting to mourn our loss. Instead of at that night, we were supposed to have the Asia TEFL webinar series launch show, right? So that was a very shocking and very kind of sad moment that we all had together. But then this idea of creating Asia TEFL webinar series that he initiated became alive. And then actually all these people are the same group that we have now, right? And we had this first inaugural Asia TEFL webinar session very successfully. As you can see, this number, we attracted more than 900 members. And then that made us even, miss him even more. And then think about the legacy that he has left to us. And again, now we are having another symposium, which he again initiated with this title, English Language and Education for the Future, Interdisciplinary Pedagogies and Collaborative Practices, with the same group that we worked together for the inaugural Asia TEFL webinar session. And so lastly, he's not with us anymore, but his spirit and his legacy will certainly be with us forever. So rest in peace, Ghana. So I guess this is all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ju Kyung. I'd now like to call upon Professor Arifah Rahman.
Okay. I, of course, do not have as much experience as JK. Can we call you JK from now on?
Sure.
JK has. And just in remembrance of Ghana. So you're JK for us. But I do have very, very fond memories of meeting with him, because I've been to most of the conferences since 2004, and Ghana has always been a very, very strong presence, strong in the sense of his impressive presence, but not as a kind of a loud person. He was extremely gentle, very polite, very dignified, very well dressed, sometimes a bit very formally well dressed, and but he was inside, he was such a warm person. And one thing I must say, that the Asia TEFL family, we call ourselves the family, the Asia TEFLers of the council and the AB members, we are all a very, very friendly, warm, well-knit group, and we all look forward to our annual meetings and all over the Asia. That's the best part. So, but I would like to just pick up on the Kuching conference, which is 2014. And he was not only the conference chair, but he was also holding other positions. And in Kuching, and such a wonderfully impressive venue. It was so beautiful, so green, and so royal also. And he had this elaborate secretariat with such efficient people running the whole business of the organization. And you know, those of us who have organized conferences, what a troublesome and what a complicated business it is. And everything was working clockwise, like clockwork. And the best part was all the sessions, the outings and everything. And I'd like to just pick up on the dinner. We had a wonderful dinner. And there he was on the stage with another of our Asia TEFL EC members, and speaking very dignifiedly. And suddenly he burst into the Gangnam dance. You know, remember the Gangnam dance, which had become
Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style.
Gangnam Style, right? The song and style. And he suddenly, you know, he broke into this dance, and everybody was like, you know, first everybody was so startled, and then it just so swept through the whole crowd, and everybody even started dancing. That was one of the most wonderful things I remember, that he was not only a very kind of, kind of cold or dignified person, but he also had a very warm heart and a very kind of, he enjoyed life. So this a good humored person, this wonderful academic, and this wonderful friend, and the way he kind of, suddenly left us right in the middle of one of his most kind of successful achievements, just before the webinar series started. That was a great loss for all of us. And we grieved that. I remember that week we were all so devastated. And we pray for his soul, and we hope that he's, wherever he is, he's in peace. And he has left us this legacy, and I hope we can carry on with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarifah Rahman. Can we hear from you, Dr. Billy Renanya?
Yes, every time I met Ghana, it was always at a conference. And there's another person from Malta, whom he usually traveled together whenever they were invited to, give presentations at conferences. What's the name again? Aslam Khan. Yes, so I know them both very well, and but I didn't have a chance to actually, or the pleasure to work with him, like Masaki or Chu Kyung. But I remembered him as a fine gentleman. He was a great scholar. When I attended this presentation, it was always impressive. He knew his stuff. He had very deep knowledge about the LT in Malaysia, and also things related to ELT beyond Asia. So I think his passing would be, greatly, was a a big loss for us, for those colleagues in Malaysia, and also for all of us in Asia. That is what I remembered about him. A very fine gentleman and a great scholar as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And finally, can we hear from you, Professor Masaki Oda?
Okay, I don't want to go. I have a lot of things to say about Ghana and my friend, and so I don't want to go on to like 1 hour. But briefly, there are a lot of coincidence things happening. And when I saw the screenshot of Jukun's, those messages there, which tells us that Ghana passed away, I thought it was a joke. Yes, because he's a very humorous person, and he's always like send me this kind of joking like message. And this is the picture. Thank you, Ramesh. This is the picture that we became the vice president at the same time with Haisha Wan and Ghana and myself. It's like three brothers. We're very close, and then I was at least experienced at the time, a little bit younger, and because that Ghana has a extensive experience in the MELTA, the national organization, and I learned from here. Not so on actually February 19th or 18th, so a few days before he passed away. Actually, I had this WhatsApp chat conversation with him, not about the webinar. We started talk about webinar, but he sent me his last message, which I cannot really erase, was I was actually nominated as a president of the JASET at the time. And I asked him on how it is like, I mean, to have working as a vice president of AJTF and the president of national organization, because I know he's very close, and then he can give me some advice. And he said, you can do it. And that was the last message that I got. You can do it. Enjoy doing it. And that's him. And I first met him at the AJTF conference. We became vice president at the same time. And the following that the year, 2014, when we had a Kuching conference, I was invited by him as a plenary speaker at that Kuching conference. But in January that year, I had a heart attack. And so from the hospital, I sent him a message that I got a heart attack, and we'll see what happens. So he didn't make anything, so just give me pressure. And actually I made it, and he actually was very patient sometimes, and never discouraged people there. And then one time, which I think Ramesh remember, in the 2017, when I went to MELTA conference in Ipoh, we actually had another friend, Tim, and who was also the vice president of MELTA at the time, and he passed away in a few days before the conference, and that was shocking. And then actually Ghana was very kind to, because having conference after that kind of things. So I thought that, remembering those things, and then when I saw Will's message and say, "Oh, was joke," but he's doing some joke again. And I still feel that I know he's a part of this session, and he might jump on and say something. But that's him. And I had a lot of organizational experience, but he's a role model as a professional conference organizer, somebody working in academic organization, wonderful, warm-hearted friend. And I don't go, I have a lot of things about, but rest in peace, Ghana, and your spirit lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Masaki Oda. Thank you, everyone, for your kind words. Professor Ghana was president of the Malaysian English Language Teaching Association for 13 years. He was probably one, if I'm not mistaken, he was the longest serving president of the association. And at least in our time, all that we knew about the association, all that we know now about the association is through his lens and his vision for what he had in mind for English language education. And you're right, he was passionate about organizing conferences. He was excellent. And, filling his shoes is something which I can't even fathom. So I can only do the best that I can in my position as president of the association now. And his memory stays with us. So thank you all for your kind words. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the theme of this symposium is English language in education for the future, interdisciplinary pedagogies and collaborative practices. This was a theme that was conceived by Professor Gana himself sometime in early 2020 for a conference which he was to chair. In the time which is left, I invite the panel members to deliberate on the role English language plays in the development of skills and literacies for sustainable education. We dwell on how education should promote interdisciplinary connections and collaborations. Professor Gana often talked about the need for English language education to move beyond the compartmentalization of knowledge and skills so as to enable learners to acquire competencies, successfully meet the demands of a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous future. Professor Park, knowledge is often developed by people working in specific disciplines. For example, we speak of scientific knowledge or knowledge of history.
Mm-hmm.
How important do you think is it for educators to consider working across boundaries of knowledge? And do you think English language lessons lend themselves for working across boundaries of knowledge?
Definitely. I believe basically education is to get our students prepared for the society they belong in the present and future life, and which is the place where all different people and different things work together. So which requires the knowledge across boundaries. So I think it's very necessary and critical for us as educators to teach our students all these different knowledge, information, and skills across borders. And as an English language educator, I think we've done it already. And for example, we deal with our students who bring with them with all kinds of personal problems and issues. And in order to handle them, we get insights from other disciplines like psychology, sociology, and philosophy, and then even some religious studies. And as we plan on our teaching materials, we get some skills and knowledge from technology or some science or so many other fields, right? So when we teach language, it's not just about language, but it includes culture. And culture is about everything, right? It includes history, it's arts and everything. So I think just by introducing this language and culture, we just naturally, we introduce all kinds of different fields and disciplines to our students. But what matters is when we as English language teachers do not have much background knowledge about these different fields, I guess we get stuck and we get in trouble. So I think we really need to expand our horizon, not only as a language teacher, but as a somewhat sort of multiplayer to get by all different knowledge and skills in different fields.
I was just wondering if what we are discussing at the moment is related in some way to what has been a tradition in ELT, and there's a sub branch, so to speak, within ELT known as EAP and ESP and all the rest of it, where teachers, actually English teachers, have to teach students who major in engineering, those who major in psychology, in business and things like that. So if you find yourself in that situation, then you need to broaden your knowledge. You need to learn not just the language, but also the content. Otherwise, you won't be able to be authentic in the classroom when you teach your students. In certain places, like in Singapore, where English is the medium of instruction, teachers will have to learn the language used in math and sciences, in history and things like that. so that they can also equip the students not only with the usual things about the grammar, the vocabulary of general English, but also the kind of knowledge, the kind of discourse features that are commonly found in mathematics, in science, and things like that. Because each discipline seems to have its own conventions. Words used in one area may have a different meaning, may have an entirely expanded meaning when it is used in other subject area. So Singapore is big in this thing, and it's locally it's known as language or literacy across curriculum. And the Ministry of Education actually is providing a lot of opportunities for teachers, English teachers in Singapore, to attend workshops, to attend classes, to familiarize these teachers with the kind of knowledge and the kind of language features that students usually encounter when they learn mathematics or sciences, the history, social studies, and things like that. So yes, this is real. This is very, very important for people, whether you are actually teaching ESP or not. As for myself, I try to learn a lot of things beyond my comfort zone. When I was younger, I read only applied linguistics books, but now I have branched out all the way, reading about psychology, about business, about finance, everything. So yes,
to make your profession more interesting, because I think in the early stage of
I agree. Yes.
Pre-service teacher training, of course we start off with like a language, applied second language acquisition. But then once you teach like 30 years something, you may face different groups of students. Like in my university, you have to teach engineering students, not knowing those engineering. So maybe I get some knowledge from those computer science majors, and then so they will help me with computer. While okay, now I think this is something, and we say this in English, so we have to read like a computer magazine in order to teach them English. So it's a kind of dynamic, kind of active process. It's always continuing. So we need to, I said, make it more interesting. We need to learn it. So, sometimes, we categorize the field too much. Okay, this is discipline A, this is sub-discipline, subject. Even the applied linguistics itself, I mean, for the last 30 years, it's a different shape right now. And that's very natural. Right?
I'd like to chip in here a little bit. Just going back historically, if you go back, we see that ELT has been one of the most, laggard of entering a more wider integrated field. ELT was very close, and we had all these terrible, behavioristic learning strategies that were being advocated, and only much later, the first discipline that really opened its eyes was the mainstream education. When we were English language teaching education, but we were not considering mainstream education, and there were so many wonderful basic tenets there which could easily be incorporated, and that was where I think we first started opening our eyes. And of course, as JK has said, that we've kind of brought in all particularly psychology. Cognitive psychology has been one of the best contributors. Today we talk about management skills, we talk about soft skills, we talk about respect and tolerance and social responsibility. So all these have come from, the sense of psychology, the philosophy, the history, everything has actually wonderfully being brought into our field. But the important thing is how we actually dealing with it. Maybe we personally, some of us may be very kind of empowered by it, but are we able to actually apply it in our classrooms, in our situations? What we need to do, perhaps, I think further question, the moderators' further questions will bring them up, is how do the policymakers and the stakeholders in curriculum and the testers, how do they look at this field that we have such an enriching, empowered, kind of concept now, but are we going about it the right way?
Indeed. content and language integrated learning comes to mind.
Yes.
CLIL.
Mm.
And, that's a term that has been thrown around quite a lot.
Yep.
Ju Kyung rightly pointed out how English language teachers themselves need to be aware and, to broaden their knowledge so that they can bring in cross-cultural, cross-content material into the English language classroom. But the challenge is also for teachers of subjects, of other subjects. In Malaysia, for example, the teaching of science and mathematics in English was a contentious issue for years. It continues to be an issue which is raised from time to time. So there's always this discussion about this integration across the curriculum.
Can I add something?
Yes.
At the school level, English language teachers can play the major role in the ESP or CLIL kind of classes. But at the tertiary level, at university level, EMI, when you have EMI courses, the more EMI courses you have, the English language teachers lose their places, because those professors who have a content knowledge and English skills, they take the classes, they teach the classes. So that's another thing that we as English language educators think about, how we are going to kind of retain our position. Right.
Well, one thing we can do is to look at how or the way they teach in the classroom, and the chances are, I think they need some help. I mean, we are stronger in terms of pedagogy. We are stronger in terms of the kind of things that a language, or content-based language will need to be taught. And so we can play a role as a people who provide services for these people who want to know a little bit more about the pedagogical bit of language teaching.
One way of collaboration. And
Right,
actually, when you talk about the historical development of CLT as a discipline, and it's big enough. It's big enough right now. But tend to think, even like some conferences, like, okay, this is our field. Maybe we can do some interdisciplinary something. So maybe we collaborate with psychology. So one by one something. But now more only, it's not just one shake hand with the others. It's like kind of going back and forth and transdisciplinary things. And so say like, if we are teaching engineering students, and then it's there's some role we can, so we really have to do it's not like something teaching engineering in English, you know what I mean?
Right. Yes, I think Ramesh mentioned about CLIL earlier on, CLIL.
Right.
Yes, I think that is a model, is a pedagogical approach that looks at content in relation to language, and also in relation to how the two can be merged nicely together for the benefit of the students.
Yeah,
so there is a pedagogical bit there.
What I was trying to say was like, when we plan that kind of things in the institutions, they say, okay, now this is something, this is our territory, this is our territory, something like that.
Right.
So like how to break down these boundaries, and that's one issue.
Yeah. Yes, Arifa, you have something to say.
Yeah, I wanted to say is that I think we have an advantage because ours is not a subject, discipline. Ours is the skills discipline. So, and we have to now intertwine it with the content, the subject discipline. So if it's somebody teaching engineering or business, then the skill comes in there. And that's where we need to see how we can really integrate that. And of course, the fact that Professor Oda has said that if he could have a kind of a partner, that a collaborative approach from faculties from both disciplines could do it together, it would be, I think, beneficial for both. It would be a kind of a what do we call this when there's a relationship and it's 2 + 2 is equal to more than 4. That's that kind of relationship we'll get. So that's what I'm trying to say.
Right. So collaboration is the key.
Yes.
Yeah.
And perhaps one area of collaboration that we want to develop in the future, perhaps we want to work with people whose area of specialization is a little bit close to us. Ours is language, yeah? And there's a group of people who specialize in communication. I think that is really, really interesting because that is one area where we can actually expand our knowledge a little bit. For example, in our presentation, class or in our speaking class, we tend to focus more on the language bit, like accuracy, fluency, and then complexity, and maybe cross-cultural competencies as well. But people in communication actually take it one step further. They talk about, hey, is your presentation believable? Is your presentation, credible? Yes, convincing. And that is one area that we have not really looked into. And in real life, in a business situation, for example, whether or not you'll be able to be successful in a presentation depends very much on how you use your voice and how you project yourself and how you use data in such a way to convince people. That is something that we can perhaps learn and maybe work together with people from communication.
Right, and I want to jump in here because you bring up collaboration. Obviously, it's difficult to talk about interdisciplinary learning without talking about collaborative pedagogy. With collaborative pedagogy, teachers strive to maximize learning opportunities through interaction and interpersonal engagement. In his write-up on the theme of this symposium, Professor Gana called for greater collaboration, collaborative engagement in English language teaching. I would suggest that this is not just, collaboration is not just a skill which we impart to our learners, but it is a practice that we as teachers must carry out. We need to collaborate as teachers. Teachers must be active collaborators themselves. What do you foresee as collaborative engagements in English language teaching in the future? Can I maybe call upon Professor Masaki Oda to begin, please?
Well, first, this is, we all the ELT professions, I mean, like including myself, and has to be aware of the fact this is necessary, and this is a way we need to, in the beginning, I was saying about the personal growth as a teacher or researcher there. And this goes with what we said in the beginning about the collaboration with the discipline, which is not really fun. It's like communication. One recent example, my university, so we are trying to kind of reorganize courses, I mean, campus-wide general education courses. And it happens to be, there is a course called Introduction to Communication offered by 3 different departments. One is by fine arts, one is by like my department, humanity, and one by the engineering. So it's very interesting. It's not directly related to English language teaching, but those 3 professors, like including myself, got together and then just compare the syllabus. It's very interesting. Now, the language people talking about, language and the communication, everything is centered with the language. Some may be nonverbal communication, culture, something. Now, engineering people, it's like a shape or like a mechanical things, and then AI things there. And then fine arts people, everything is a sign, those semiotic things. But I think so it's very, unless we are aware of the fact, even like the same we are dealing, we think that we are specialists of communication, but people see that differently. But after like 20 years, I didn't know these 3 departments are teaching those things. And that was a really hint. I mean, the English language teachers that we're dealing with like, human communication. And I don't know whether we could be doing that for the teacher training, maybe course development, but this kind of a self-reflection of our own discipline of what we are doing, that is really needed. And I think this is necessary, and this is a way to go.
So you give a good example of collaboration, in a higher learning institution. I wonder whether other members of the panel can talk about collaboration of teachers in school, English language teachers in schools. Do you think it's happening enough? And if it's not, what exactly is holding teachers back in collaborative practices?
I can think of collaboration between like a native speaking English speaking teachers and non-native English speaking teachers. That's a very I guess very important collaborative partnership. But in reality, I mean, at least in Korea, that collaboration didn't work very well, and because both parties lack understanding of each other's culture, and they lack kind of intercultural communication skills, and the administrators lack the management skills and all. So the collaboration between these two groups are very critical, and yet it has not been done in a very efficient way. So I think we need to educate them, both groups, how to collaborate and to make a better education.
One form of collaboration that I've seen happening in some places is this idea behind lesson study. And the idea came from Japan, actually, and it has spread in many other places. In the lesson study project, basically teachers work together, they plan lessons together, and then they observe each other delivering the lesson, and then they sit back and assess the lesson together again. So that is a great example of how collaboration can happen among teachers, especially those who are interested in self-directed or group-directed professional development. I think it's happening. Yeah, of course, we'd like to see more of this kind of things happening with a larger group of people out there. But teachers always have this, mantra, I'm so busy, I don't have time, the curriculum is so tight and things like that. But collaboration is there happening. On a personal front, most, if not, most 80–90% of my publications are joint publications. And I find that I learn a great deal from my collaborators. Sometimes I'm the lead person, and sometimes the other person is the lead person, but there's always something that you can learn from working with other people. Now, there's a saying that when we were a child, we were dependent on older people. And when we get slightly older, we want to assert our independence. Hey, I'm 17 years old. I want to be independent. But once you start working, going into the workplace, you can't. You have to be interdependent. You need to work together with other people. Big projects, technological breakthrough, for example, is the result of people working collaboratively together. So yes, two heads are better than one. So that's
I'd like to just add, or rather interject here. I recall Professor Arifah Rahman, who just talked about policies which need to be in place to encourage practices. Do you think policies need to come from the top, where collaborative engagements are involved? Do you think there has to be the right ecosystem in place for collaboration to take place?
Very interesting question.
That's a good question.
It depends. It depends on where you are, actually. I know that in some places it has to come down from the top, but I know that in some other places, especially in those places in small European countries, I think teachers are given a lot more authority, power, a lot more flexibility to actually do things on their own. They don't even have to follow the one and only one syllabus or curriculum as dictated by the Ministry of Education. They can come up with their own syllabus. There's this book that I just came across recently, wonderful, wonderful book. And the title actually tells us everything. The title is In Teachers We Trust. Isn't that wonderful? And that is exactly what is happening. Those small countries in Europe like Switzerland and Finland. Wonderful, wonderful book for us to look at. But things like that may not be possible yet in this part of the world.
Right.
Not in Singapore, not maybe in Japan.
Not in Korea, no.
Not yet.
No.
But maybe sometime in the future.
Right.
Actually, the speaking of policy, when we start from scratch, there, it is better you have a kind of guideline, kind of rough guideline. But very often when we get busy and then, so, okay, now we'll take a safer side. Okay, just follow the guideline. So it's kind of meritocracy things, syndrome things, you just follow the guideline there. And then, so I was also talking about the collaboration, and I think going back to Jukyo's about those native speaker, non-native speaker things. They actually, yes, I think recently I've been writing about something in the article about the kind of historical development of native speakerism in the ELT in Japan. And actually it started, and then people talk about, okay, now started to recognize the value of non-native speakers there. And then actually some university, even job placement, something, people started to realize that. And then, but then that is yes, without that step, we didn't come further. But yet, when we started talking about the ERF and those stuff, now like my own university, Tamagawa, which you may be familiar with, that we don't distinguish the native and non-native things and the hiring practices. It's the first university in Japan. And what is happening was, in the first time, like university administration, stakeholders, the parents, students thought there should be the division and then different also sign. But after 10 years, almost 10 years now actually students are the first group to adjust that. So that was really good. And then there's also the collaborative practice, those reflection things coming from lesson studies. It was very difficult. So we have to have a rule. Okay, now each teacher should go to observation of that. And that is actually kind of discouraging in a way, or you are being observed, inspected, actually, something like that. But then at some point we create atmosphere, okay, now you have like a composition, and then one teacher teaching 301 gave an A for that composition, and then say, okay, like how would you rate that, something. So it's kind of informal conversation going on, and it's created good atmosphere. This is a small level, but day-to-day collaboration, something. So in a way, because I've been in the administrative position for the couple of years, and then I think this is something like administrator can do to create an atmosphere.
I think that's an excellent example, and Masaki is a living proof of how things that was or considered dichotomous, like native and non-native, could be brought together, and they can learn from each other. There was a time when everything about native speakers was wonderful, and then years later, everything about native speakers was bad. There was a time when
so it's not really. So in our world, we have a lot of wide.
I agree. Yes.
Qualitative versus quantitative native speakers.
Absolutely. Yes. It's about time that we understand that a good teacher is a good teacher. Doesn't matter where you come from. Whether you come from Malaysia, whether you come from Bangladesh, whether you come from the US, if you're a good teacher, you're a good teacher. Whether you were born in the US is immaterial. So yes, Masaki,
I'd
take
like
my hat off to you. Yes, Arifa, go ahead.
Yeah, I lost you for a few seconds actually. So you're still on collaboration. So I'd just like to bring up two little things. One was what JK has said about school. You had mentioned about school collaboration. In Bangladesh, actually, the whole culture of teachers collaborating with each other is a bit kind of, dodgy. Because somehow teachers feel, I'm alone in this and I'm isolated. I have to do my best. I can't show my, face, like the not very accomplished face to other people. So the whole culture has to be, I think it has to be grown within the school first, internally within one school where teachers can, and here we are talking of agency. I think whether the policy from the top tells us to do it or not, if it can be grown, homegrown, the feeling of agency, the teachers are agentive people who can take this initiative and say, hey, why don't you come and see my class and I'll go and see your class? And those sort of opening up. and those sort of, frank discussions, and what did I do wrong? Do you think like I brought in when I was teaching, people saying that, I said, like, just watch me with how I treat my weaker students. We are usually how the teachers always, focus on the more active ones.
Mhm.
Can you just point, pick up so ways of understanding, and of course there should be some mentoring. And if it opens up, then you can go across schools, and then of course the whole thing has to be an educational concept that has to be also understood by everyone, policymakers and everybody. And I want to just bring in one thing that we have been doing during the COVID-19, that is language teachers associations collaborating with each other. This has gone on now for the last 2 years, and I think we've all very much, just very recently, I think SPELT, Pakistan, they had the international conference, and they had a whole lot of people from all the other associations. We had ours in about March, and we invited 8 language teachers associations, and all of them sent, and we had 2 very dynamic panel discussions. And we think that has been a very good opening up across borders. And Ramesh, you are an example, of course, how we, the 3 associations, Melta, our association Belta, and the Nepal Association Nelta, we have actually kind of agreed on a collaborative research which we are taking forward. So here are so many opportunities. And the fact that the pandemic has actually opened up all these opportunities for us. And we hope that we don't kind of stop post-pandemic days.
Well, I'd like to add about this making policies from like a top to bottom or bottom up. I think it's needs to be done by the whole education community, which includes the government and business industry sector and research institutions, educational institutions, and the community. As long as each member of the community has the equal power and initiatives, then that can work quite well. And yet, in reality, for example, in Korean context, the government has the strongest power. And so all the kind of order comes from the top. But when the government makes a policy, they should hear from more diverse sectors, and particularly educators and researchers should have bigger voice. But it doesn't happen that way. So, but I heard that in Singapore, even though the government is very deeply involved with this making educational policies, but they hear from the industry. They have like a 5-year examination on the results of the kind of industrial demand, and then they get the report from this Department of Commerce and Industry, and then they make policies along with the researchers, and then they implement this curriculum at the educational institutions. I'm not sure how. I mean, that sounds so idealistic. So if that's just a kind of propaganda, or that's the reality, but I think that's the way we should go.
Yes, in Singapore, the process of revising or coming up with a new curriculum actually is a long process. It usually takes about 3 to 5 years of preparation, of talking to stakeholders, of comparing, analyzing other, curriculums in other places in the world, and then they come together, and then they consult with, parents as well, and with the only teacher education institution, which is my institution, NIE, and then we work together and we come up with a new syllabus. So the latest syllabus, EL, English Language 2020, is a compilation or a synthesis, if you like, of many different ideas coming from different sources that this curriculum people put together. I think the curriculum is very, very nice. It's forward-looking, it's future-looking as well. And one of the, yes, and one
You're
of the
very
big,
lucky.
one of the big
Singapore is
objectives,
a small, organized, and developed country. So
we have nothing. We have nothing but people. That's why
but that's
the government
thing,
invests
you
heavily
are
on
actually,
people.
using your people, using them for the right work. In our country, however, in countries like South Asian, a lot of the South Asian policies, what we have is, you know, the government has some very, very different agendas to the actual education development and all that. And of course, kind of dissenting voices are usually not looked upon very kindly. And I suppose if I say too much now, tomorrow I'll be in trouble. And the thing is, the agenda of the government mostly is like they have to show to the people that they are doing wonderfully well, and they're educating all the people, and then the results, the tests, the state, you know, examinations are kind of have to show very high statistics of pass and all that. So, and when the statistics go up, then kind of testing and, you know, practices go down because then it becomes invalid or unreliable and all that. And then the fact is that the day the results of the high schools come out is such a kind of celebration, because 90% have passed, or, you know, everybody's got a golden A in English. And of course, and the TV people go around asking the children, tell me something in English, and he's got a golden A, grade point average. And he's asked, like, say in English, and he says in Bangla that I have a dog. And the poor child will say, I am a dog. And, and I don't blame the child. People laugh at it and all that. I said, no, it's not the child's fault. It's the system's fault. You're teaching them in this way. You know, there's so much of rote learning and practicing and the same questions coming. That's a huge, huge obstacle, you know.
Good example.
Like, and that is why hats off to Singapore.
Yes, good example. When things go wrong, do not blame the child. Change the system.
Can I just add that comment, because that's become very interesting, because here, like government, in the case of Japan, the government try to legitimate their policy using, okay, this is public opinion. This is what everybody said, something like that. But the reality is, so you have all the mass media, which is very, very cooperative. And then so they read, so they have the writer's voice, reader's voices, something, and says, but those people who write like has no knowledge about this. It's like, no, we were in trouble. Parents who are in trouble when they were child, and then so maybe we want your kids get good grades in English, because I think grades are the only indicators. Test and that kind. So this kind of goes a vicious circle. And then government taking advantage of it and say, try to legitimate, okay, our policy is good. Now grade TOEFL score is going up, TOEIC score is going up, or something like that. It's going, and as someone said, I mean, like this is something like the professional organization. Also, I'm a president of JASET, but I think the academic need to voice and have more say about it. And of course, we're trying to do that. And also, it is very interesting, because this is what I learned and beneficial from working with people like you in the Asia TEFL for the last couple of years. And it is very interesting when we talk with the government and say, okay, okay, in our university, blah, 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 something. No. Okay, in Korea, we have this statistic. In China, we have this, and the government listen to it.
Oh. That's interesting.
You know, like Pennycook has said, that entangled processes, entangled.
Right. I think Arifa used two words which you know, caught my attention: culture and teacher agency. And you know, when I think of you know, I have many friends who are teachers in schools right now, and they all lament about, as Willie pointed out, that they have no time and they're busy. And this is certainly true. There is, you know, it's amazing the kind of dedication that it takes for teachers these days to cope with the situation which we're in. But at the same time, you often hear teachers talking about the challenges of preparing material, adapting material, pitching lessons for students who are, on target, students who are below target. And you hear these teachers talking about these struggles, and you wonder, surely other teachers are facing the same kind of students that another teacher has, and yet this collaboration doesn't seem to be taking place. There may be a need for some kind of a central mechanism to bring these teachers together to collaborate, but sometimes you don't even hear of collaboration within the school. So as Arifa pointed out, that culture needs to be there, and teachers need to feel empowered to take a leadership role in collaborative practices. So as Willie pointed out, Singapore has a new curriculum. We have a new curriculum here in Malaysia as well, but this is a curriculum that has come top down simply because we have drawn on the Common European Framework of Reference for this new curriculum. And this is not something that we have expertise or we are familiar with. But for a new curriculum to take root and for it to succeed, there needs to be the buy-in from teachers. And if that buy-in is not there, and the appreciation and an understanding of the reasons behind the curriculum, the new curriculum is not there, we're going to struggle. We're not going to see the kind of success that we hope to see. Would any of you like to pick up on this point?
Well,
Arifa, go ahead. Arifa, go ahead. Oh, was it Jukyung? Yes, Jukyung, sorry, go ahead.
In Korean context, what happens is actually our most recent revised national curriculum was issued in 2015, and next year in 2022 we are going to have a new curriculum, which is national curriculum. And before we actually implement this new curriculum, we had a series of hearings with the public. And yet, what happens is when this government issues a new curriculum, the school teachers do not really actively try to implement the new curriculum, because they know that in some years later, they will get to have another new curriculum. So even before they get used to the new curriculum, they will face another new curriculum. So that's kind of a big issue and problem. And the thing is, not only the curriculum, but the whole educational system needs to change in order to realize the goals of the new curriculum. But changing the whole system is very difficult. So it doesn't happen easily. So it's kind of a vicious circle, and people talk about issues, problems, same thing over and over, but no, I guess, resolution.
I think Willie was going to say something.
Yes,
I think you go ahead.
Yes, very brief. In Singapore, the government set up a center. It's called Academy of Singapore Teachers, Academy of Singapore Teachers, and within that center, there is a small branch within it. It's called ALICE, English Language Institute of Singapore. Now, these centers are set up by the government in order to provide support to teachers in the whole country. For example, when a new curriculum is implemented, there's a lot of very experienced teachers. These are called master teachers, very special teachers who have had a lot of experience, teaching and doing, teacher development. They would go out to school and they will provide workshops. They will provide, a lot of support for the teachers to help them become more familiar with the new ways of doing things as mandated by the new curriculum. So support is there for the teachers to actually understand what the demands of the new curriculum, and also materials are sort of provided, if you like, for the teachers to use, and also a set of pedagogical approaches are also made available for the teachers out there. So
We
that
have
is
something
one
similar,
thing.
but I suppose even geographically speaking, the challenges are much greater in Malaysia. They want to compare it with the Singapore context.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And also in terms of the background of the students can be significantly varied here in Malaysia, and perhaps even in countries like Bangladesh. I think the urban-rural divide, for example. Yeah, these are some challenges. Moving the discussion along, and kind of coming back to this notion of interdisciplinary learning. It has been extensively argued that English language lessons provide excellent opportunities for honing creativity, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. How do you think interdisciplinary learning experiences can support the development of these skills? How do we draw on maybe cross knowledge experiences? How do we draw from the experience, the knowledge which is in other disciplines, and use that to enhance and support our learners with developing creativity, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills?
Well, I'd like to share with you my own experience. My colleagues at my department and I have developed and implemented this 5-year government-sponsored project, which is to globalize cultural content of Korean, the southern part of Korea, which I am based in. And then what we did was to have, as part of the curriculum, we had interdisciplinary workshops for which we invited professionals and experts from different disciplines. And then we had intercultural exchange programs, and we actually took our students to 4 different countries in Taiwan, Japan, Singapore, and where was it? Canada, and one more, I can't remember. And also, when we invited these experts, they're from ICT and cultural industry, and some arts, and some other, like a film, and so on. So by having this the curriculum, some of my students, they're English majors, but they got interested in more diversified career paths. And then they got this idea of developing their talents other than developing English skills. So I think that's one way that we could kind of incorporate and collaborate with other fields. But the challenge is we need money to make that happen in order to invite some other professionals. And another issue is
we need to be allowed to travel as well.
Oh yes. And then in order to sustain this curriculum, again, we need a fund. So it was a 5-year project, and after 5 years, we couldn't continue. So I'm really sorry that we could not continue this program, but that can be certainly a good model of interdisciplinary, I guess, pedagogy and practices.
Maybe I can share with you some of the kind of even smaller scale what I'm doing for this semester, the pilot study. This is the English language pre-service teacher training program, but they were actually supposed to spend a year in England or Ireland or some, but because of pandemic, they weren't able to go. So what happened? Instead, I designed a course called Language Teaching in Asia. And what is happening is you have the 20 students taking, that is partially online. And instead of going there, actually, okay, now you read, so this is a kind of translingual mode. So I sometimes switch the language between Japanese and English, and they read some of the critical issue of English language teaching in Japan because it's the English major. And then what they do is they choose one of the countries in Asia and see what happens. Now, first they thought, okay, now we have to lead the English language teaching. But for example, if you are assigned to do Malaysia, and they have to know about Malaysia, so they either go to that somebody who is familiar with Malaysia, or maybe you have to read something about not just English language teaching, but some geography, history, something. So they take a turn. So I don't know, this is like a 50-week. Now, so they will do the interim report and see what happens. So then I just contacted with my Asia TEFL friends and then see who they can help and ask you for your help for the next semester. But it is working quite well. So what is happening is, first, they have to discuss. They have to look for something. So they have to learn how to look for. It is not just English. It is not just education. So the wider their range is, so they have to write a kind of portfolio and reflection sheet. And actually, they are running a lot. So it's going to be, I will maybe next year's HTF4, and I will just report that one, but it is very good. But one thing, it's a grassroots thing, that even one teacher who can design the course like, and it is, I think, no, this is, I think this whole, Ghana was talking about this webinar something, and taking advantage of our networking, more option for the collaboration. And this is one of the things that I took advantage of, his idea actually.
I'd like to pick up on what Ramesh has, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
You talked about creativity and critical thinking and problem solving and how English, the ELT field can, I think it's so important if we consider how English language education is bringing in this sense of social responsibility. You know, we are now, every one of us are now so aware that we do, all teachers, all educators have a social responsibility. Now, if we have a social responsibility and if we can pick topics which are important and using those to bring in all these skills would be, I think, easier. If you consider in our teacher education, we do Bloom's taxonomy, and that is a very simple scheme. But I mean, although it was very naive at the beginning, but people have done a lot more work on Bloom's taxonomy, and that part about the creative thinking and the reflection and all that has really developed well. And it doesn't have to be only with adults. It can be with young learners also. You know, young learners in schools do surveys nowadays, you know, like, you know, what kind of ice cream does each child like, and they go about asking, then they make those graphs and charts, and then they make a survey and they
project-based learning, yeah.
Project-based learning,
yeah.
of course,
Right.
project-based. And you know how they stand in front of the gate and see how many Toyotas are going by. Unfortunately, Toyotas run the world. So we too have hundreds and thousands of Toyotas. So, you know, these little things, and then going back home, bringing in the home culture, bringing in grandparents into the thing, you know, asking because children nowadays are absolutely cut off from the older generation. So all these things can bring about, you know, more creative thinking and more problem solving. Of course, if you pick things like, particularly the environment now is such a big issue. And instead of talking about environment, climate change and climate crisis and climate challenges, why don't we now talk about climate justice? That is what we want. And like we have the COP26 where some of the world leaders are actually copping out of their responsibilities. And where these, even young children are now aware of it. So if we can bring these into the classroom, I think there's a great opportunity for critical thinking and you know, problem solving coming in. And of course, depending on the levels of the students, we can actually integrate these tasks. Of course, the teachers have to understand it.
Thank you.
Yeah, this 21st century skills, you know, critical thinking, yes, creativity and things like that. I am a little bit worried, especially if you work with students from the less advantaged background, whose language proficiency is not wonderful, in the target language, in our case, in English, I am not sure that is something that we want to do. To me, the best way to teach critical thinking, creativity is in a language that the students are very strong in. And that means in their first language. If we are really, really serious about really developing the ability to think more critically, to be more creative, I think you have to do it in Japanese, in Korean, or in Bangla language, or in Malay.
You brought up a wonderful, brought up
Yes.
a wonderful
Yes.
point here,
Yes.
because now we are looking at alternative pedagogies where
Yes.
translanguaging
Right.
is something that we're all looking at, and
Yes.
is being actually genuinely being looked at, not as a deficit. You know, remember, we always looked at it as a
You
deficit
celebrate,
model of,
Yes.
you celebrate
Celebrate
the fact that you have
Yeah.
another language.
and
Yes.
day before yesterday,
Agree.
I was at a conference, and somebody
Absolutely.
used the
Yes.
word guilt multilingualism.
Yes.
They use the word guilt because I'm a multilingual,
Right.
and they
Yes.
use the word guilt. So
Yes.
imagine the kind of concepts we are working with,
I
and
agree.
the kind of mind changing that is taking
I
place.
agree.
And
Yes.
I'm at the moment doing a bit of research on
Mm.
primary schools, and we're looking at translanguaging as a pedagogy.
Yes.
So
Our lower
as
proficiency.
a positive pedagogy, not a
I
negative
agree.
pedagogy.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yes. Yes. Our lower proficiency students often sound not very smart. Not because they're not smart. It's because they are handicapped by by the fact that they have to use English, which they are not proficient in.
And mistakenly, we think that they are cognitively also shallow. But
Exactly.
they may not be cognitively.
Exactly.
They may be
Yeah.
linguistically poor, but not cognitively poor. So if we give them the proper tools of communication, they would perhaps develop better.
Yes.
I have to own up, because when I trained as a teacher, and I remember one of the few things that I remember well was being told that the use of the mother tongue is pretty much the last option, forbidden, right?
Yes,
it's really the last thing, the last resort.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now, like I said, even with the CFR now, with the companion volume, they talk about mediation, which takes place in conversations as well as discussions, where student A would use the mother tongue to communicate and messages to student B, for example. And I thought, wow, this is really celebrating the second language learner or the foreign language learner.
Right.
And so this is great. Yeah.
Yeah, if you are talking about, like we talked about those content areas, and if you are talking focusing on the content area, and then I think if you have like maybe many languages options, then take advantage of it, right?
Yeah.
All right. If I don't know how successful I'm going to be in raising this final question, because time is not on our side, but let me just go ahead and raise this anyway. If we can just chip in our thoughts on this. We return to the key phrase, the theme of this symposium: English language and education for the future. We remain in uncertain times, though we are hopeful that the environment, for effective learning improves. I don't know what the situation is today in Singapore, in Japan, or in Korea. But it is our job as English language teachers to prepare our students for the challenges of today and the future. As we survive, or can I say it, as we have survived the last couple of years with the pandemic, do you think that current practices, current policies are adequate in equipping our students with the skills they need to make informed decisions, and to take, individual or collective action to change the society in which they live, or to care for the planet?
I think in some countries, people have taken the first few steps. Take Singapore, for example, or take my institution, which is the only teacher education institution in Singapore. The past 2 years, we have been adopting this big, philosophy, if you like. It's called future ready. We want our graduates, we want our student teachers to be future ready. So before they become before they go to school, before they start teaching, we want to prepare them to be, a student teacher who is able to think ahead, who is able to continue learning beyond their initial degree. So the idea of lifelong learning has been embedded, and also the idea behind life deep learning and life wide learning, and finally life wise learning. So these have been, part and parcel of our curriculum the past 2 or 3 years. And one thing to remember is that the future is going to be very, very uncertain. And because of that, we should be ready to continue to learn, and more importantly, be willing to relearn what we have learned before, and also to unlearn. Remember, Ramesh, the many things that we were told before turned out to be wrong.
Unlearning,
so, yeah, we have to admit that what we did in the past was wrong, and be ready to learn new things, to unlearn, and in order to learn new things. I think that is the way to go. Yeah. So we have taken the first few steps. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll never forget the one thing we heard was, one mistake made is one mistake learned. That was what we were told in our initial days as a teacher. Oh my God. So if you don't let our kids take risks, they'll never learn.
Right. Well, in Korean context, Korean national curriculum is also future directed, and yet the still our mindset or the perceptions of English itself is still, I guess, lacking the genuine understanding of English as a lingua franca. So I think that's one step, one very important step to move forward.
Yes.
Well, I think Japanese case is the same as Korea, but except I think we have a national guideline, but each of the 47 prefectures have to implement that. So they're different interpretation. So in a way, the government would say, okay, it's up to you how to interpret it, something like that. So we really have to know this as a university professor. I am not as a strong influence of the government, but do what we can do, which means like we'll take a deep breath and we'll do changing the paradigm, like perception about English, which I think will implement something in pre-service teacher training. And then also, like, for example, so it's going to, like a car navigation. We used to read a map. And so we have to decide which exact street to go to, like, for example, go shopping mall, something like that. But now you have this navigator with satellite. So you really have to go to, as far as you know, like you go now north or south or something like that. And then when there's a traffic jam, there's another way, something. So we really have to give students option, and that keep changing. And so that we'll have to train your student to be able to adjust themselves and very flexible enough to deal with the world.
And that requires a big change in the way we do things in the classroom. We have to change. The transmission model of teaching will have to go, because knowledge does not belong to us anymore. Knowledge does not reside in our university or in our school. Knowledge is everywhere. And our big job for the future, to prepare students for the future, is to help the students, to guide them in finding, in selecting,
where they are,
evaluating, knowledge that is available out there. I think that's the future. Knowledge is just too much out there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Billy.
I
just wanted to add here, if you have a bit of time, that with we are now kind of coming to hopefully to the end of the COVID, and during the COVID situation, the kind of the kind of opportunities that have opened up for us for education through this virtual teaching methodology has been extensively, we say that everything is disrupted, but then we also caught up, and then how people have really kind of gone on to accept things and improve and develop, and everybody's so excited that we're doing all that. The technology people have said that we would not have dared to bring in these things in the next 10 years, but COVID has allowed us to bring these in, and then we had consumers who were actually using them. Now the big thing is, in my country, people are just waiting to go back to the classes after COVID. Now shall we give up this wonderful opportunity we've had to bring in changes? We are talking of blended learning, we're talking of hybrid learning, but how do we actually, systematically proceed in doing this? So I'm afraid in Bangladesh, once the classes start and all the kids rush into the classroom, the teachers might just then go in there, close the doors, and go on teaching like they have been teaching
back to normal.
years.
Yeah.
Absolutely, back to normal. And this is where I think if we give that opportunity up now, we will be doing the greatest disservice to education and to our learners, to our young people. So how do we go forward? I'm sure every country has their own strategies and own context. Singapore probably is most well placed to go forward, but I'm really worried about Bangladesh, what we're going to do and how the education ministries and the policy makers will look at it and how the teachers will look at it. So, but I do hope that we don't give up this grand opportunity for bringing education out of its stagnant shell and out into the open, and giving our learners who have now become very much self-directed learners. They've taken on the responsibility of learning now. There's so much on the internet. They know much more than the teachers do, actually. And the teachers are all worried that they know so much. So that's where the scenario is in my country. And that's where all our worries are. So I hope things work out well.
Yeah, indeed. There's so much. Excellent point, Arifa. I mean, there's so much talk about learning loss, and I'm sure that's an issue that must be addressed. But there's also been so much learning which has taken place during the pandemic. How many teachers would have considered online classes before the pandemic? And look at how quickly we've taken this on board. Of course, some have been less successful than others, but certainly the learning has taken place. So that's a fantastic point. I think this conversation can continue, but we've really pretty much run out of time. As I prepared to moderate this symposium, I was aware that we had to be controlled by the limitations of time. There is just so much to speak on this theme, and credit must go to the late Professor Gana for conceiving this theme. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the panel members for their insights, which I hope will provoke further discussions at future events. For me, as a moderator, I must say this has been a treat. Listening to your thoughts, and I hope the conversation continues in some other platform. I also like to thank all of you, the participants who are joining us at this symposium. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And I hope Ghana will be happy about it.
He'll be more than happy. I just want to tell all of you, I'm sorry, I'm just butting in right now, but I'm sure he's smiling down, looking at us from heaven and thinking that I must have done something good down there, that I have friends like these guys. And honestly speaking, many of us didn't know him, but whatever that you shared, or each and every one of you, it made us also feel like, yes, we kind of knew him, and we will definitely learn to be a human being like him. And to obviously, while we are here, we give our best to everybody and help out everyone. So thank you so much, everyone. It must not have been easy. It must not have been easy for all of you, but you did it. Thank you.